faithfully delivering value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hi there, this is Sally with the Book Talk. Today, I'm going to introduce you to the book called The City and Pressure. Nowadays, many of us often talk about wanting to escape the city and return to the countryside, that idyllic pastoral life. Often, what we want to escape is not the city itself, but the pressure it brings. The noisy environment, fast pace, cramped living spaces, etc., all of which make people tense and anxious, unable to find happiness. Yeah. But on the other hand, the city also provides us with more opportunities, greater room for growth, and a higher quality of life. Therefore, when there's a real chance to leave, we often hesitate. Moreover, by 2050, it's predicted that two-thirds of the global population will live in cities, meaning urban life has become an unavoidable topic. So, how should we deal with the pressure in cities and find our own ideal life? Today's book will delve into this for you. The author of this book, Maza Adri, is a German psychiatrist and also a stress research expert. He serves as a senior physician in clinical psychiatry at Freie Universität Berlin. In the book, the author uses theories from neurology, urban studies, and psychology to comprehensively analyze urban stress and how to view and cope with it. Next, I'll explain this book to you from three aspects. First, why does the city cause psychological stress? Second, what impacts does urban stress have on us? Third, how should we face urban stress and find our ideal city? Let's start with the first aspect. Why does the city cause psychological stress? The author believes that high social density and low-quality social relationships in cities make people feel excluded. Humans are social animals. Once excluded, it means they might not survive in the group, leading to feelings of loneliness and fear. And these negative emotions cause stress. Let's first talk about social density, which refers to the number of people in a given space. As social density increases, the space available to each person decreases. Humans are naturally territorial. Once their territory is invaded, the amygdala in the brain releases alarm signals, and we adopt a defensive attitude to protect ourselves. For example, when waiting for the elevator, people pretend to look at their phones. In the office, even if they're not listening to music, they like wearing headphones. And they rush around on their way to and from work. These habits in daily life are actually because people don't want to talk to others, want to keep their distance, and not let others invade their personal space. And once people fall into self-protection mode, they tend to turn a blind eye to others' needs and are less willing to help. For instance, compared to people living in rural areas, city dwellers are more likely to ignore injured people calling for help because they're preoccupied with their own affairs and rarely notice those in need. And in such an environment, life makes people feel unsupported and excluded by others. Besides territory being easily invaded, social density can also lead to territorial disputes, such as fighting for seats on buses or cutting in line. Another example, in big cities, car drivers and cyclists also fight over territory. Cars often occupy bike lanes and cyclists recklessly ride on motor vehicle lanes. It's precisely because public space in big cities is limited that everyone has to expand their territorial boundaries and compete, making people feel adversarial towards others and thus excluded. The competition triggered by high social density isn't limited to territory. It also includes other social resources like education and healthcare. Every parent wants their child to attend a good school, but there are only a few good schools. According to the proximity-based school assignment policy, to secure these quality educational resources, you need to have a home in the school district. As you can imagine, housing prices in school districts naturally skyrocket, and this further highlights the huge wealth gap. People who can't afford homes feel they don't get equal social resources. Besides high social density, low-quality social relationships in cities also make people feel excluded. Low-quality social relationships refer to a lack of truly effective interpersonal connections. For example, you might have many friends but still feel very lonely. You might have hundreds of contacts in your phone, but only a few you can confide in. There are two main reasons why cities have low-quality social relationships. First, ineffective socializing. Ah, I Robin Dunbar, an anthropologist at Oxford University, believes that in social networks, we can maintain meaningful relationships with up to 150 people. Here, meaningful means we not only know the other person's name, but also share experiences with them and form emotional connections. Once we exceed this limit of relationships, it becomes ineffective socializing. In big cities, many people have to maintain too many relationships, which actually prevents them from forming truly close bonds with others. When a person lacks supportive relationships, they feel lonely and socially excluded, leading to low-quality social connections. The second reason is social isolation. When a person's personality clashes with their living environment, or they feel out of place, they can easily become isolated and excluded. Immigrant communities are a classic example of this. Many societies that receive immigrants are fearful of strangers and even more distrustful of foreigners. As a result, immigrant groups find it hard to integrate and feel intensely excluded. Sometimes this isolation and exclusion may not be based on facts, but merely the individual's perception. For example, some women in the workplace, even if they haven't personally experienced gender discrimination, may feel they'll hit the glass ceiling after seeing other female colleagues being discriminated against. And, having discussed the causes of urban stress, let's move to the second aspect. What impacts does urban stress have on people? Moderate stress allows us to respond quickly and appropriately to threats, ensuring our survival and unlocking our potential. For instance, when our ancestors were hunting and faced threats from wild beasts, they felt stress, triggering a fight or flight response. Without this stress response in the face of danger, humans wouldn't survive. However, if the stress doesn't stop and the body remains in a state of alert for a long time, it leads to chronic stress. Living in cities, we face crowded environments, unfamiliar crowds, and constant feelings of fear, loneliness, and exclusion almost daily. This repeated stress damages our health. Specifically, it can be divided into physiological and psychological aspects. Physiologically, urban stress causes a series of damages to the body. For example, social stress increases the risk of cardiovascular diseases and weakens the immune system. People under prolonged social stress also show elevated levels of various inflammatory markers in their blood. Scientists once conducted an experiment where one mouse attacked another for 2 hours daily over a week. They found excessive inflammatory cells in the lung tissue of the attacked mouse. And research from the University of Pittsburgh found that people enduring long-term social stress had triple the risk of catching colds. Those facing work difficulties are more likely to get colds. On average, longer stress duration means higher infection risk. Social stress even affects newborn health. Norwegian scientists studied mothers who frequently argued and had extreme emotional swings during pregnancy. They found these mothers' infants were more susceptible to infectious diseases during breastfeeding compared to others. This happens because the brain secretes a hormone called cortisol. It helps maintain normal physiological functions under stress, stabilizing blood pressure, reducing inflammation, etc. But excessive cortisol raises blood sugar, increases appetite, causes extreme fatigue, and disrupts metabolism and energy balance. Normally, the hypothalamus and pituitary gland detect high cortisol levels and suppress its secretion. But during chronic stress, this feedback system shuts down. The hypothalamus and pituitary stop responding to cortisol. Over time, cortisol remains chronically elevated, leading to physical illness. Now let's discuss psychological impacts. Social stress increases depression risk. The neurological term neurasthenia perfectly describes the mental state of urban dwellers. This tension manifests as physical, mental exhaustion, mood swings, and cycles of lethargy and agitation. Chronic stress also brings persistent fear, loss of control, and helplessness, from feeling powerless to change one's situation. Two main reasons for this psychological impact. First, prolonged stress alters specific areas of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is part of the brain's limbic system. One key role of this system is producing serotonin receptors, big molecules that spur the brain to make serotonin, which fights depression. But chronic stress can weaken these receptors, leading to depression. Oh, the second reason is high cortisol levels, as mentioned earlier. Too much cortisol shrinks the hippocampus, which controls emotions and memory. Its neurons combat depression, so shrinkage makes depression more likely. You might wonder, if city stress causes so much harm, should we just flee to the countryside? Well, not exactly. Cities bring social pressure, but they also build our resilience to stress. Researchers at Germany's Central Institute of Mental Health in Mannheim found urban residents react more sensitively to social stress. Bigger cities and longer urban upbringings lead to bigger brain differences versus rural folks. That's because growing up in cities teaches better adaptation to crowds, busy traffic, and tight spaces. Facing more social stress, the brain stress handling system gets tougher and quicker.
For kids especially, city perks usually outweigh the downsides.
Because the social environment really shapes children. Cities pack in culture, education, and growth chances, giving kids more peer interactions, unlike rural areas where they miss out. So, since city life's a mixed bag, any way to enjoy the perks but handle the pressure, that brings us to part 3, how to cope with city stress and find your ideal urban spot. We've got 3 tips. Number 1, gauge your city stress using a mental map. A mental map is how you picture a city in your mind. Stanley Milgram, an American psychologist, found that a sharper mental image of a city means you know it better, feel more in charge, and stress less. When sketching their city, some folks nail details like overpasses, highways, or landmarks. People can piece these details together in their minds to form a clear picture of a city, making it feel comfortable and less stressful. But for others, their city is just a silhouette. They might only know their own neighborhood and be clueless about other areas. This lack of a unified concept makes it hard to grasp the city's size and divisions, reducing belonging and security, which adds stress. You can try sketching your own city in your mind to see how you view it, using Milgram's method. Actually, this testing method isn't perfect. Ideally, a city's mental map should show different emotions for various ages, genders, and personalities, both day and night. For example, in Beijing, 20 or 30-somethings might feel more stressed during the day than at night, but for 50 or 60-year-olds, the difference might be smaller. Similarly, introverted young people downtown who aren't good at socializing might feel more stressed than outgoing ones. Although such a map doesn't exist yet, many researchers are working on creating one. With such a mental map, it'd be easier to gauge a city's stress and find one that matches your inner needs from diverse options. For instance, do you prefer a bustling big city or a slower-paced, cozy or small town? Hardly any city pleases everyone. So, we should balance the pros and cons, choosing a city that meets our needs at a particular stage. Of course, not everyone has the freedom to choose. So urban planners need to focus on residents' mental states and boost happiness through city design. For example, green spaces in cities can improve residents' psychological well-being. Scientists at the University of Washington in Seattle studied over 2,000 pairs of identical twins. These twins had the same genes and upbringing, but as adults, some lived near green areas while others didn't, and those near greenery had lower depression rates. Why green spaces relieve stress isn't entirely clear yet. The author thinks one reason might be that green areas bring people together, helping them feel supported. Even small green pockets help. Specifically, we can build pocket parks between buildings and parking lots, beside railways, or next to office buildings. These pocket parks don't need huge resources or long construction times. They're like mini retreats in the city, effectively improving residents' living environments. Second, Tackle urban stress by choosing cities with high social capital and building your own. Social capital means the quality of relationships in a community. Higher capital builds mutual trust, which then deepens reliance on each other. Cities with strong social capital benefit people more. Robust social networks activate the cingulate cortex, which eases stress, making our brains feel naturally better when connections are stable. Social capital also provides real-life support, lightening daily pressures. For example, in high social capital cities, neighbors or community workers will step in if you're sick and alone. These cities are also more inclusive. People here tend to be open-minded and welcoming to diverse folks. There are two types of social capital. First, bridging capital. The more a city has, the friendlier it is to strangers. Reader's Digest ran an interesting test. Staff dropped wallets as experiments. They placed 12 wallets in various spots across 17 cities worldwide, pretending they were lost. Each contained $50 cash, a credit card, and a fake family photo of the owner. They wanted to see how many wallets got returned in each city. The top two were Helsinki and Mumbai, returning 11 and 9 wallets respectively. Affluent Zurich only returned 4. Madrid and Lisbon ranked last, returning 2 and 1 wallet respectively. The author believes this wallet experiment measures bridging capital. Wealthier cities with low bridging capital tend to be less friendly to strangers. So if you're new to a city, high bridging capital makes integration easier. The second type is bonding capital, where kindness mainly benefits acquaintances. Take Berlin. Excellent communities with mutual support among residents, but often closed off to strangers. High bonding capital but low bridging capital explains why Berliners return just 6 wallets. Newcomers to Berlin might feel excluded. In high bonding capital cities, integration requires more time and patience. But once you're part of the community, you'll feel strong support. Of course, city newcomers can't always find high social capital areas. And support varies even in such cities.
That's why we must build personal social capital to compensate.
Your social capital depends on factors like how much your friends, neighbors, or family value community interests. Do you live in a big city or small town? Are you a longtime resident or newcomer? How open is your personality? Are you socially adept? For building personal social capital, the author offers 4 tips. First, find a close confidant outside your family, someone always available. Call them with problems, worries, or just to share happy news. You should memorize their phone number. Second, maintain at least 3 friends for occasional meetups, cooking together, chatting in parks or cafes. Third, keep an address book. It can be digital or paper-based. Use it to record names, addresses, and phone numbers of people who spark your memories or emotions. Occasionally, browsing this book helps. It preserves memories of past experiences, helping you feel part of the surrounding community. Fourth, develop a hobby or join a simple leisure activity like joining a choir or soccer league. These leisure activities are actually effective ways to expand and strengthen your social network. Third, the method to handle urban stress is learning to adapt to big cities. Specifically, develop urban living skills. The book mentions 2 key skills. First, accept urban complexity and enhance psychological flexibility. Second, improve your ability to occupy and participate. Let's start with the first skill, accepting urban complexity and boosting psychological flexibility. Cities are complex entities where people from diverse backgrounds collide, with completely different knowledge, skills, ideas, and interests interacting. And cities constantly change. Buildings get renovated, shops relocate, businesses open and close. For city dwellers, environmental changes require constant life readjustments. For example, if your regular restaurant suddenly closes, you must find a new place to eat. Urban complexity requires us to psychologically tolerate this reality and take creative action against sudden changes. Practice this by asking yourself during changes, can I find a solution? Say your usual commute route gets blocked, forcing a longer detour. Ask yourself, can I use this extra time productively, like listening to Sally's book talks or handling unfinished tasks? By confronting unpredictability, we boost mental flexibility and urban adaptability. The second urban living skill is improving occupation and participation abilities. Occupation means feeling the city is partly yours mentally, not materially. Cities won't approach or understand you. Those who actively engage with city life benefit most. The author uses a metaphor. It's like really wanting concert tickets that sold out.
Do you complain at home about missing tickets or go wait at the venue hoping for cancellations?
To develop city occupation and participation skills, start by exploring your surroundings. Get to know neighbors, your community, or local history stories. Cross social boundaries or break personal habits to build ownership feelings, like taking new routes home or joining unfamiliar clubs. Of course, tackling urban stress isn't just individual effort. Cities need design improvements too, like creating more personal space or involving residents in urban planning to build belonging. The UK's Assemble Art Collective transformed Liverpool's rundown Granby area. Residents deeply participated, even laying streets with tile fragments and construction waste. This made them feel like true stakeholders, strengthening belonging. All right, that covers our discussion on cities and pressure. Cities are double-edged swords, offering opportunities but also loneliness and stress. Managing urban stress requires tolerance and flexibility, embracing diversity, which is the city's true charm. That concludes our exploration of the city and pressure. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.